My name is Vivian and I am 29 years old. For most of my life, my father controlled everything about me through emotional manipulation and professional sabotage. No one ever intervened, not even when he publicly humiliated me at a medical industry networking event, dismissing my groundbreaking research as child's play in front of international investors. My mother actually smiled and said, "At least now people will remember you for something." My father added, "She has no real value to this industry, just decoration at our table." What they never expected was how those medical professionals reacted. Their faces went pale when they witnessed what my family really was. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If you have ever felt invisible in your own field of expertise, please subscribe. My journey might help you find your own way out. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American medical dynasty. My father, Marcus, was a successful pharmaceutical CEO who had built his empire from inherited wealth. Our house in the suburbs of Boston was the envy of the medical community with its elegant laboratories and sophisticated decor. My mother, Patricia, was known for hosting the most exclusive medical charity galas and research fundraisers. And then there was me, their only daughter, always dressed in designer lab coats, always smiling at medical conferences. No one saw what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. My earliest memories are of desperately trying to earn my parents' recognition as a legitimate scientist. When I was 6, I created my first science experiment at home. My elementary school teacher had praised my curiosity, even recommending me for the gifted program. I remember practically vibrating with excitement to show my parents. My father glanced at my volcano model for barely a second before saying, "Is this really the best you could do?" Real science requires precision and methodology. I did not even understand what methodology meant at that age. My mother was no better. She was obsessed with appearances in the medical community. "Stand up straight, Vivian." "Speak more confidently, Vivian." "That outfit makes you look unprofessional, Vivian." Nothing I did was ever enough. I learned that their approval was conditional based on achievements that constantly fell short of their impossible standards. When my brother Oliver was born when I was 8, I thought things might change. Maybe with 2 children, the pressure would ease. Instead, it only highlighted the difference in how we were treated. Oliver could do no wrong in their eyes. His average grades in basic sciences were celebrated while my advanced placement scores were expected. His lack of interest in medicine was just exploring his options, while my passion for research was unrealistic dreaming. Our extended family must have suspected something was wrong. My grandmother once asked me if everything was okay at home, after noticing how I froze when my father criticized my science fair project. But when I started to tell her, my mother interrupted, steering the conversation toward Oliver's recent soccer achievements. My Aunt Margaret occasionally gave me concerned looks, especially when my father dismissed my academic accomplishments in front of other medical professionals. But she never said anything. Nobody ever did. The warning signs of my father's rage were always there. When research funding was denied or competitors succeeded, he would slam doors or throw medical journals across his office. My mother taught me from a young age how to manage his moods. "Just stay quiet when he comes home looking like that," she would whisper. "Do not give him any reason to focus on you." I became an expert at making myself invisible, speaking only about safe topics, anticipating his criticisms before he voiced them. School became my only refuge. I threw myself into science and mathematics, partly to earn their approval, but also to lose myself in the pure logic of discovery. I joined every science club that would have me. Chemistry team, biology Olympiad, research internships, anything to delay going back to that house. By middle school, I had internalized the belief that there must be something fundamentally wrong with my approach to science. Why else would my own parents, both in the medical field, treat my interests this way? I scrutinized myself endlessly, looking for the flaws they seemed to see so clearly. Too theoretical, too impractical, too ambitious, too naive. I could never get it right. My father controlled our lives with an iron grip disguised as scientific rigor. He monitored my research projects daily, questioning any hypothesis that did not align with his commercial interests. He vetted my study groups, refusing to let me collaborate with anyone he deemed not business-minded enough. When I was 12, I was invited to my first science camp at MIT. He called the program directors to interrogate them about practical applications and career prospects before ultimately deciding it was too theoretical. I cried myself to sleep that night while other kids experienced real research. My mother was more subtle in her control, but no less damaging. She weaponized guilt about our family's medical legacy. "After all we have invested in your education" became her favorite phrase. When I expressed excitement about pure research, she would remind me of patients who needed immediate help, and how selfish I was to pursue abstract theories. Material resources were provided, but emotional support was withheld. Our house was filled with expensive equipment, but devoid of encouragement. The laboratory setup was for show, not exploration. Family meals were presentations where I practiced defending research proposals rather than sharing discoveries. My father would use dinner to interrogate me about practical applications. "What will this achieve that justifies the time investment?" he would ask. I was not a child to them. I was a future employee they expected returns from. As I entered my teen years, I became increasingly aware that our family dynamic was not normal. I saw how my friends' parents celebrated their interests and supported their curiosity. I noticed how other fathers encouraged their daughters' ambitions instead of questioning their viability. I observed mothers who nurtured their children's dreams rather than sacrificing them to maintain family reputation. But this awareness only made me feel more isolated, more convinced that my research interests were somehow flawed. If I could just find more practical applications, maybe they would value me the way other parents valued their children. My teenage years brought a new dimension to my father's criticism. It became more professionally targeted, more personally devastating. As my scientific abilities advanced, they became another target for their disapproval. My mother monitored every research paper I read, commenting on my impractical interests, as she called them. My father made remarks about my career prospects that no father should ever make about his daughter. "No medical institution will want you if you keep pursuing these fantasy projects," he would say at dinner. Or, "You should be grateful we can afford this education. Your unrealistic goals would embarrass any serious researcher." The college application process became a new battleground. I wanted to study bioengineering, fascinated by regenerative medicine, and perhaps unconsciously seeking to heal the wounds in our own family. My father laughed when I told him. "Bioengineering is for people who cannot handle real medicine," he declared. "You will study business and join my pharmaceutical company." End of discussion. My mother, as always, supported his decision. "Your father knows what is best for your career, Vivian. Why must you always chase impossible dreams?" I applied to bioengineering programs in secret, even earning a full scholarship to MIT for their cutting-edge regenerative medicine research program. When the acceptance letter arrived, my father intercepted it. The resulting confrontation was one of the worst of my young life. He tore the letter to pieces in front of me, calling me ungrateful and delusional. Then he made calls to his contacts on the university's research board, ensuring my scholarship was somehow redirected to a more practical candidate. I ended up at his alma mater studying pharmaceutical business management as he demanded. During my freshman year of college, I met Alex. He was kind and genuinely interested in my research ideas, the first person who seemed to value my scientific curiosity and innovative thinking. We had been dating for 3 months when I finally agreed to bring him home for dinner. Within minutes, my father began subtly undermining me, telling stories about my impractical experiments and contradicting my explanations of current medical research. Alex noticed, giving my hand reassuring squeezes under the table. Later that night, he gently suggested that my father's behavior seemed unusually controlling for someone in the sciences. It was the first time anyone had named what was happening. 2 weeks later, Alex and I broke up. My father had called his family, expressing concerns about Alex's commitment to practical medicine and future earning potential. He implied that Alex was using me to gain access to our family's medical connections. Alex's parents, both doctors themselves, pressured him to end the relationship. I was devastated but not surprised. Anyone who tried to support my scientific interests eventually became collateral damage. In my father's campaign to maintain control over my career path, depression and anxiety became my constant companions, though I never had the words to describe what I was experiencing. When I mentioned feeling disconnected from my research to my mother, she told me to focus on more practical concerns and stop being so self-indulgent. Physical symptoms began to manifest. Migraines, insomnia, panic attacks before research presentations. A campus health center doctor suggested counseling, but my father refused to pay for it, calling it academic weakness. After graduation, as planned, I began working at my father's pharmaceutical company. This opened a whole new avenue for control. He criticized my research proposals publicly, held me to impossible standards of immediate profitability, and took credit for any innovative ideas I developed. Colleagues avoided collaborating too closely with me, knowing I was under the CEO's constant scrutiny, all except Charlotte, the senior research director, who saw through the dynamic immediately. Charlotte was in her 40s, confident and accomplished in regenerative medicine research. She began mentoring me discreetly, offering guidance and support that I had never experienced before. What your father is doing is not normal or acceptable in any research environment, she told me after witnessing a particularly harsh dismissal of my stem cell research proposal. And I suspect it is not new behavior. That simple validation was revolutionary. Someone else could see what was happening. I was not delusional or incompetent. Meanwhile, my mother's role evolved from passive enabler to active participant. She no longer just excused my father's dismissiveness. She joined in. When I showed up at Sunday dinner excited about a breakthrough in my cell regeneration studies, she looked at me with barely concealed disdain before saying, "That enthusiasm makes you look naive. I do not know why you insist on pursuing research that will never help real patients." The charity galas continued, more elaborate than ever now that I was working in the family business. These events were performances where we pretended to be the perfect medical family. My father would boast about mentoring me in practical medicine while simultaneously undermining my confidence in my research abilities. "Vivian is still learning," he would tell donors after I spoke about regenerative medicine, patting my hand condescendingly. "She has a long way to go before she understands how real medical business works." My resentment grew, but so did my desperate hope for their professional approval. Even as an adult researcher, I could not shake the belief that if I just found the right practical applications, achieved more immediate results, somehow they would finally respect me the way I had always needed to be respected. It was a cycle I could not break free from. The professional intimidation that had always simmered beneath the surface became more overt. My father would dismiss my research proposals during meetings, using his authority to silence my contributions. He would stand over my desk during discussions, using his position to tower over me intellectually. Once, when I disagreed with him about the potential of immunotherapy research, he slammed his hand on the conference table so hard that my coffee cup rattled. "This is why women do not belong in serious research," he hissed. Too emotional to handle real scientific pressure. Through it all, I continued to seek their approval. I still believed somehow that I could earn their respect if I just found the right balance between innovation and practicality. It was like trying to solve an equation where the variables kept changing. Every time I thought I had found the answer, the parameters would shift again. The medical networking event that changed everything happened on a Thursday in April. My father had invited representatives from the Thompson Foundation and Chen Biotech, investors considering funding for a major regenerative medicine initiative. These partnerships would potentially revolutionize our company's research capabilities. "Everything must be perfect," my mother stressed as she supervised the catering for the elegant reception. "Vivian, wear the navy blazer I selected. It makes you look more serious as a researcher." I spent hours preparing, knowing how important this night was to my father's business expansion. I reviewed the latest research papers and clinical trial results so I could contribute intelligently to the scientific discussions if asked. I had my presentation materials prepared and my talking points rehearsed with scientific precision. The navy blazer, as my mother had noted, did project the professional image she desired. Looking in the mirror, I almost did not recognize myself. I looked polished, credible, scientifically authoritative. Maybe tonight would finally be the night I earned their professional respect. The evening began smoothly enough. My father was in his element, charming and knowledgeable as he welcomed our distinguished guests. Dr. and Mrs. Thompson were an established couple, respected in the medical research community for decades. The Chen representatives were younger, representing an innovative biotech company that could bring cutting-edge approaches to our traditional pharmaceutical model. My mother played her role flawlessly, the sophisticated hostess, making everyone feel welcome while subtly highlighting our family's medical achievements and social status. I was on my best behavior, speaking only when directly addressed about scientific matters, contributing thoughtfully to discussions, complementing the quality of the research presentations. The first course was served and conversation flowed around emerging medical technologies and research funding trends. My father dominated the discussion as always, positioning himself as the visionary leader who recognized breakthrough potential before others. Then Dr. Chen asked about our company's approach to personalized medicine, an area where my stem cell research had shown remarkable promise. Before my father could respond with his usual business-focused answer, I spoke up, sharing detailed insights about cellular regeneration patterns and therapeutic applications. The table fell momentarily silent. I had not been invited to contribute to the scientific discussion. To my surprise, Dr. Chen seemed genuinely impressed. "That is a remarkably sophisticated analysis of cellular mechanisms," he said, nodding appreciatively. "You obviously have a deep understanding of where regenerative medicine is headed." Mrs. Thompson agreed, adding that their foundation had been seeking exactly this kind of innovative research approach. For a brief shining moment, I felt validated and valuable as a scientist. Then I made the mistake of glancing at my father. His face was a rigid mask, but I recognized that look. Beneath his polite smile, rage was building. I had stolen his spotlight, demonstrated knowledge that surpassed his business-focused understanding, and worst of all, impressed his potential partners with my genuine scientific expertise. My stomach knotted with dread. I knew there would be consequences, though I never imagined how severe they would be. The main course arrived, perfectly prepared salmon with seasonal vegetables. My father smoothly reclaimed control of the conversation, steering it toward financial projections and market viability. When I caught Charlotte's eye across the table, she gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. She had been invited as the research director and knew how significant my contribution had been to our understanding of cellular regeneration. About halfway through the main course, the conversation turned to research succession and next-generation scientists. Dr. Thompson mentioned how their foundation prioritized supporting young researchers with innovative approaches. "There is nothing like investing in brilliant minds with fresh perspectives," he remarked. "Is that the plan here? Will Vivian be leading your regenerative medicine research program?" My father's hand tightened around his wine glass. "Vivian still has much to learn about practical medical applications," he said dismissively. "Leading research requires a certain business acumen that not everyone possesses." The implication was clear. Not me. Never me. I should have stayed quiet. I knew better than to challenge him in front of potential investors. But something in me snapped. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "my stem cell regeneration protocols have shown 95% success rates in preliminary trials. Our cellular therapy patents could revolutionize spinal cord injury treatment within 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Chen smiled approvingly at me, clearly impressed by the scientific precision. Dr. Thompson looked intrigued by the research possibilities. My father's face darkened, and my mother's smile became brittle. I knew immediately I had crossed a line from which there was no return. What happened next occurred so quickly that at first no one processed the full impact. My father did not strike me physically, but his words cut deeper than any physical blow could have. He turned to the investors with a condescending smile. "I apologize for my daughter's enthusiasm," he said, his voice dripping with professional disdain. "Vivian has always confused theoretical possibilities with practical reality. Her research is essentially expensive hobby science, the kind of impractical work that burns through funding without producing marketable results." He gestured dismissively in my direction. "She has no real value to serious medical research, just decoration at our investor meetings." The effect was devastating. Dr. Chen's expression shifted from interest to skepticism. Mrs. Thompson looked uncomfortable, glancing between me and my father with growing concern. Charlotte's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My mother actually nodded approvingly. "Marcus is right," she said, her voice unnaturally bright. "Vivian has always been prone to grand theories. We have been trying to teach her more realistic approaches to medical research." The humiliation was complete and public. Blood rushed to my face as I felt my professional credibility crumbling in real time. I could taste the metallic flavor of defeat. Tears welled in my eyes, but I fought them back. Crying would only confirm their assessment of my emotional instability. "Excuse me," I finally managed to whisper, standing on unsteady legs. "I should review some research data." "Yes, that would be best," my mother said, her voice unnaturally cheerful as she tried to salvage the situation. "Vivian gets so carried away with her theories. Please continue your discussion." The real business decisions happen without her input anyway. As I walked away, I heard my father smoothly pivoting, telling the investors that I had been struggling with unrealistic expectations lately. "We have been very concerned about her grasp of practical medicine," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "You know how it is with young researchers these days. So much pressure to publish. We have been considering getting her more business-focused training." The last thing I heard before I closed my laboratory door was Dr. Thompson's cool reply. "Perhaps it is not Vivian who needs different training." In that moment, a perfect stranger showed more respect for my scientific abilities than my parents ever had. In my private laboratory, I locked the door and finally let the tears come. The humiliation and professional destruction felt worse than any physical assault. My research proposals lay scattered across the desk, suddenly seeming naive and worthless. I caught my reflection in the laboratory mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because of the tears streaking my face, but because of the defeated, hollow look in my eyes. How long had I looked like that? As I mechanically organized my research materials, memories of previous incidents flashed through my mind. My father dismissing my science fair victory when I was 10, telling other parents that I had gotten lucky with a simple experiment. My mother telling medical colleagues that I was going through a research phase when I was 13, suggesting they not encourage my unrealistic interests. Countless professional humiliations, each one normalized until I accepted them as accurate assessments of my abilities. My phone buzzed with a text message from Charlotte. "Your research is brilliant. Do not let them convince you otherwise. Can we talk?" It was the first time anyone had ever defended my scientific work after one of these incidents. I did not know how to respond. Was my research actually valuable? Had I been deluding myself? Before I could reply, there was a sharp knock on the laboratory door. "Vivian, you have been in there long enough." My mother's voice came through, irritated rather than concerned. "The investors are asking about dessert presentations." This behavior is unprofessional. I opened the door to find her standing there, arms crossed. There was no sympathy in her expression, only annoyance that I had disrupted her perfect medical networking event. "You provoked him," she said quietly. "You know better than to contradict your father in front of investors with your theoretical nonsense. What were you thinking?" "He dismissed years of research in front of potential collaborators," I whispered, still not quite believing it had happened in front of everyone. "Do not be so dramatic. He was being realistic about market viability, and you should be thanking him. The Thompsons and Chens will remember you now at least." She handed me a tissue and some concealer. "Fix your appearance and come back for the presentations. And for goodness sake, smile. Your sulking makes you look unprofessional." I did as I was told, robotic in my compliance. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I smiled. I nodded. I apologized for my overly theoretical approach when Mrs. Thompson asked if I was all right. The Chen representatives left early, citing schedule conflicts. The Thompsons stayed for coffee, but seemed less enthusiastic about potential collaboration. No one mentioned my research contributions again, but the dismissal hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The drive home was silent. My father acted as if nothing unusual had happened, commenting only on the quality of the wine and Dr. Thompson's golf handicap. My mother discussed redecorating the reception area. It was surreal, this ability they had to rewrite reality instantly. In their version of events, my father had not professionally destroyed me at a crucial networking event. I had simply had an embarrassing lapse in judgment, perhaps even intentionally caused by me to sabotage his business relationships. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake, replaying the moment over and over. Not just my father's professional assassination or my mother's complicity, but the reactions of the others at the table. They had seen. They had been uncomfortable. Their faces confirmed what part of me had always known but never fully accepted. This was not normal mentoring. This was not constructive criticism. This was systematic undermining. The next morning, I went to work as usual, though every instinct screamed at me to flee and find a research environment where I would be valued. The laboratory was unusually quiet when I arrived. People glanced at me and quickly looked away. Charlotte had called in sick. The rumors had already started spreading through the research community. My father summoned me to his office before noon. "Close the door," he instructed when I entered. His voice was calm, which was always more frightening than his shouting. "We need to be very clear about something, Vivian. What happens in our family business stays within our family business. Do you understand?" "Yes," I replied automatically. The Thompson Foundation called this morning. They have decided to fund a different research program. His eyes bored into mine, placing the blame squarely on my shoulders. Your little scientific exhibition last night cost this company millions in potential funding. I hope you are satisfied. I said nothing, which seemed to infuriate him more than any response would have. If anyone asks about last night, you had a migraine. You became overly enthusiastic due to stress. That is all. Family business stays private. Is that clear? Is that clear? Crystal clear, I replied, my voice hollow. Later that day, my mother called, insisting I come for lunch on Sunday. We need to present a united front, she said. The medical community talks, and we need to show there are no issues in our research team. No apology, no acknowledgement, just concern for professional appearances as always. When I returned to my desk, there was an email from Charlotte asking to meet after work at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. Part of me wanted to decline, to retreat into the familiar isolation that had been my protection for so long. But a new fragile voice inside urged me to go. Charlotte was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth away from windows. She looked up as I approached, her eyes taking in the exhaustion that concealer could not hide. "Vivian," she said simply, "I am so sorry." Those 3 words broke something in me. No one had ever apologized for what my parents did to my professional development. No one had ever acknowledged that it was wrong, that I deserved better treatment as a researcher. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "What happened last night was professional sabotage," Charlotte continued quietly. "It was abusive and unethical, and from your reaction, I suspect it was not the first time. They are not always like that," I found myself saying, the reflexive defense of my abusers coming automatically. I was being too theoretical. I spoke out of turn. Charlotte reached across the table and gently took my hand. "Vivian, listen to me. Nothing you could have said or done would justify what your father did. Nothing. No mentor should ever treat their mentee that way, no matter how ambitious their ideas are. But they are my parents," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "Yes, they are. And that makes their behavior worse, not better. Parents should nurture their children's talents, not destroy them." She squeezed my hand. "You deserve better, Vivian. And I think part of you knows that. Or you would not be here talking to me now." That conversation with Charlotte was the first crack in the foundation of lies I had built my career upon. The lie that my research was impractical. The lie that I somehow deserved their professional dismissal. The lie that I could never succeed without their approval. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that the problem was not my research approach. It never had been. The day after meeting with Charlotte, I called in sick to work. It was the first time I had ever done so, and my father's angry voicemail suggested he knew it was an act of rebellion rather than illness. But I needed space to think, to plan, to reconnect with my scientific passion. Charlotte had given me the business card of her therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. And after hours of hesitation, I finally made the call. Dr. Mitchell was able to see me that same day. Her office was warm and inviting. Nothing like the cold clinical space I had imagined. She listened without judgment as I haltingly described my childhood, my relationship with my parents, and finally the networking event incident. When I finished, she did not immediately offer advice or diagnosis. Instead, she asked one simple question. "What do you want your research career to look like, Vivian?" No one had ever asked me that before. My research interests, my scientific dreams, my innovative ideas had never been considered valid on their own merit. "I do not know," I admitted. "I have never been allowed to pursue research for its own sake." "Then that is where we begin," she said gently, "by giving yourself permission to value your scientific curiosity, to pursue meaningful research, to dream of making real contributions to human health." Over the next few weeks, I began meeting with Dr. Mitchell twice weekly. She helped me understand terms like professional abuse, intellectual gaslighting, and career manipulation. She explained that my father's behavior matched the profile of a narcissistic authority figure, and that my mother was what therapists called an enabler, or sometimes a co-abuser in professional settings. Most importantly, she helped me see that none of it was my fault. Children do not cause their parents to undermine their careers, ever. Meanwhile, Charlotte was helping me in more practical ways. She went apartment hunting with me during lunch breaks, focusing on buildings with good security and locations my parents would not think to monitor. She introduced me to her research contacts, who helped me understand my options for independent research positions. Small steps toward professional independence that felt simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. You need to gather all your research materials and intellectual property documentation, Charlotte advised one afternoon as we reviewed potential laboratory positions online. Research notes, patent applications, publication drafts, any work that belongs to you personally. Do it gradually so they do not notice. I nodded, adding these items to the growing checklist on my phone. The list was both practical and symbolic, each item representing another thread of professional control I was preparing to sever. The hardest part was maintaining the facade at work and during family interactions. I had to pretend nothing had changed, that I was still the compliant, submissive researcher I had always been. My father remained coldly professional at the office, though I occasionally caught him monitoring my computer activity and research communications. My mother called daily with seemingly innocent questions that I recognized as surveillance. What time will you be in the lab tonight? Who were you having lunch with yesterday? Why was your car parked near the university campus on Saturday? The Chen company had officially withdrawn from partnership discussions, citing concerns about our research culture and leadership style. Other potential collaborators began keeping their distance as well. Rumors spread through the biotech community despite my father's attempts to control the narrative. In the close-knit research world, word traveled fast about principal investigators who mistreated their staff, especially their own daughters. As my father's research prospects dimmed, his mood at home darkened. The tension during Sunday dinners became unbearable. Every research idea I mentioned was scrutinized. Every publication I referenced was analyzed for signs of impractical thinking. My mother intensified her criticism, perhaps sensing my growing detachment. "You have been different lately," she accused one evening. "Is this still about that networking event, for goodness sake?" Vivian learned to accept constructive feedback gracefully. Constructive feedback? That was how they framed professional sabotage. A necessary correction of my unrealistic research ambitions. In therapy, I began exploring not just my present circumstances, but my future research possibilities. Dr. Mitchell helped me see that I had valuable skills that would allow me to find positions elsewhere. "Your expertise in regenerative medicine is cutting edge," she assured me. "And your father does not own your scientific knowledge or your future discoveries." Secretly, I updated my research portfolio and reached out to contacts in the field. People I had met at conferences who worked at institutions far from my father's sphere of influence. To my surprise, several expressed serious interest. Apparently, my research spoke for itself despite my father's constant professional undermining. The apartment search finally yielded results. A small but modern one-bedroom in a secure building across town, available immediately. The rent was within my budget, especially once I factored in the savings I had been quietly accumulating. Charlotte helped me sign the lease, using her address for the paperwork to avoid tipping off my parents. "When will you tell them?" Charlotte asked as we celebrated with coffee after signing the lease. "Once everything is in place," I replied. "I cannot give them any warning. They will try to stop me," she nodded, understanding the stakes better than most. "You will need a safety plan for the actual day. Would you like me to be there?" The offer touched me deeply. Having someone on my side, someone who believed in my scientific abilities and supported my independence, was still a novel experience. "Yes," I said. "I would like that very much." Over the next 2 weeks, I gradually moved essential items to the new apartment. Research materials in small batches that would not be missed. Personal belongings, scientific equipment I had purchased myself. Each item transferred felt like reclaiming a piece of my professional identity. The final piece of my escape plan fell into place when I received a job offer from the National Institutes of Health. The position came with a significant salary increase and, more importantly, complete research autonomy. I would be leading my own regenerative medicine laboratory, valued for my expertise rather than tolerated as the CEO's daughter. I accepted immediately, negotiating a start date 3 weeks out to allow for my transition. As the pieces of my new life assembled, my father grew increasingly suspicious of my behavior. He began monitoring my laboratory access more closely, questioning colleagues about my conversations, even following me to lunch one day. I maintained the facade as best I could, but it was becoming harder to hide the fundamental change taking place within me. I was awakening to my own scientific worth, my own research potential, and he sensed it. One evening, he called me into his home office. "There have been some concerning reports about your conduct. he began, his voice deceptively calm. Meetings outside the office, unusual phone calls. Care to explain? Just networking, I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. Building relationships with research collaborators like you always taught me to do. He studied me for a long moment. You are planning something, he said finally. I can always tell when you are lying, Vivian. Whatever it is, I strongly advise you to reconsider. Family loyalty should always come first. Of course, Father, I replied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I would never forget that. As I left his office, I knew my window of opportunity was closing. He was watching me too closely now, the walls closing in. The time for careful planning was over. I needed to act. The final Sunday dinner before my planned departure arrived. I had already moved most of my belongings to the new apartment. My resignation letter was drafted and saved on my personal laptop. Charlotte had agreed to pick me up afterward with the last of my things. Everything was in place. My mother had prepared her usual elaborate meal, oblivious to the fact that this would be the last time I would sit at her table. My father was in an unusually good mood, having secured a new research contract the previous day. My brother Oliver was home from college for the weekend, completing our family tableau. The Harrison Pharmaceuticals contract is finally signed, my father announced as he carved the roast. After the debacle with the Thompsons and Chens, we needed this win. He glanced at me pointedly. Fortunately, some clients still recognize practical research when they see it. That is wonderful news, dear, my mother replied, passing the potatoes. I always said they would come around to appreciating realistic approaches. The conversation flowed around me as it always had, full of subtle digs at theoretical research and passive-aggressive comments about practical applications. But tonight they did not land as they once had. Each barb bounced off the armor I had been building in therapy. With Charlotte's help, through my own growing self-awareness of my scientific worth, I was no longer the vulnerable girl desperate for their professional approval. I was a woman ready to claim her research independence. Vivian, you are quieter than usual tonight, my mother observed halfway through the meal. Are you feeling all right? You look tense. I am fine, I replied, setting down my fork. Actually, I have something I would like to discuss with all of you. My father frowned. This is hardly the time for whatever research drama you have been concocting. We are celebrating a significant business achievement. This will only take a moment, I continued, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. I wanted to let you know that I am leaving. There was a moment of confused silence. Leaving what? My mother asked. Everything, the house, the company, this research dynamic. I took a deep breath. I have accepted a position with the National Institutes of Health. I have rented my own apartment. Today is my last day here. The silence that followed was deafening. Oliver stared at me with wide eyes, fork frozen halfway to his mouth, my mother's face drained of colour, and my father, his expression shifted from disbelief to fury with frightening speed. This is absurd, he said finally, his voice dangerously low. You are not going anywhere. You have responsibilities to this family and this research company. My responsibility is to my scientific integrity now, I replied, surprised by the calm in my voice. For 29 years, I have tried to earn your professional respect and approval. I now understand that was never possible. Not because of any failing in my research, but because of fundamental flaws in how you view scientific collaboration, mentorship, and basic professional dignity. My mother gasped. How dare you speak to your father that way after everything we have invested in your education? What exactly have you invested in me, Mother? I asked quietly. Nurtured my curiosity, supported my research, celebrated my discoveries? Or have you enabled his professional sabotage while adding your own unique brand of intellectual dismissal? Professional sabotage? My father practically spat the words. Is that what your therapist is calling quality control and realistic expectations now? This victimhood mentality is pathetic, Vivian. I felt a chill run through me. How do you know I have been seeing a therapist? His smile was cold. Did you really think I would not notice? I monitor everything that affects my company interests. Phone records, credit card statements. Did Dr. Mitchell help you craft this little declaration of research independence? The revelation that he had been monitoring me so closely should have frightened me. Instead, it only reinforced my decision. Yes, therapy has helped me recognize patterns of professional abuse, intellectual gaslighting, and career manipulation. It has helped me understand that what happened at the networking event with the Thompsons and Chens was not constructive criticism, but part of a lifelong pattern of undermining my scientific confidence. My father stood abruptly, towering over the table. "You ungrateful little." He stopped himself, glancing at Oliver, who was watching with a horrified expression. "Oliver, go to your room. This conversation is not for you." "No," I said firmly. "Oliver should hear this. He should know what this family really is. The perfect medical dynasty image we project is a lie. Always has been." My father's face contorted with rage. "You do not give orders in my house." "That is the point," I replied, rising to my feet as well. "This is your house. It has never been a home to me, just a stage for your performance as the successful medical businessman and mentor. Well, I am done playing my role in your production." He moved toward me, fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, and old instincts urged me to cower, to apologize, to retreat. Instead, I stood my ground, looking directly into his eyes. "Go ahead," I said quietly. "Show Oliver exactly who you are. Show him what happens when someone in this family pursues independent scientific thinking." He froze, caught between his rage and his need to maintain the facade, especially in front of Oliver. The mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the emptiness behind his eyes, the hollowness at his core. My mother attempted to salvage the situation as she always did. "Vivian, you are clearly overwhelmed and not thinking clearly. Let us discuss this tomorrow when everyone is calmer." "There is nothing to discuss," I replied, turning to face her. "I am not asking permission or seeking your approval. I am informing you of my decision. If you walk out that door," my father said, his voice deadly calm, "now do not expect to ever come back. You will be cut off completely. No funding, no job references, no family support. Is that what you want?" "What I want," I said carefully, "is what every researcher deserves. Recognition that does not have to be earned through submission. Respect for my scientific autonomy and intellectual dignity. Mentors who nurture rather than undermine. Since I cannot have those things with you, yes, I am prepared to walk away." My mother began to cry, but I recognized the performance for what it was. These were not tears of sadness for losing me, but tears of frustration that her control was slipping. "After everything we have sacrificed for your education," she sobbed. "How can you be so ungrateful?" "I learned professional cruelty from experts," I replied without emotion. "But I am choosing not to continue that legacy." Oliver spoke for the first time, his voice small and confused. "Vivian, is it really that bad? They are demanding, but—" "Oliver," I said gently, "you have had a different experience in this family than I have, and I am glad for that. But yes, it has been that bad. The night Dad publicly humiliated me in front of medical investors was just one incident among many. The constant criticism, the intellectual control, the professional manipulation. It is abuse, and I cannot live with it anymore." Their faces went pale when I refused to back down, when they realized they had no more power over me. The shock in their expressions confirmed what I had begun to suspect. They had never seen me as a full person with professional rights and intellectual dignity. I had always been an extension of themselves, a research asset to be controlled. My scientific independence was inconceivable to them. "I have a car waiting," I said, picking up my purse. "The rest of my things have already been moved. I have left my letter of resignation on your desk, Father. My research projects have been properly documented for transition to the team. You will regret this," my father threatened. But his voice lacked its usual conviction. "When you fail out there on your own, do not come crawling back. The only thing I regret," I said as I walked toward the door, "is not doing this years ago." I left without looking back, walking out into the warm evening air with a strange mixture of terror and elation flooding through me. Charlotte was waiting in her car at the curb exactly as promised. As I slid into the passenger seat, she squeezed my hand. "You did it," she said simply. "I did," I replied, my voice breaking slightly as the reality of what I had just done hit me. "I really did." As we drove away from the house that had been my professional prison for so long, I felt something I had never experienced before. The lightness of intellectual freedom, the unburdening of a lifetime of unnecessary scientific shame and professional guilt. I was terrified of what lay ahead, but for the first time in my life, the future was mine to discover. The first weeks in my new apartment were a strange mixture of exhilaration and panic. Simple decisions overwhelmed me. What research projects did I want to pursue? What time should I work in the lab? What scientific conferences should I attend? Without my parents dictating every aspect of my professional life, I felt simultaneously liberated and adrift. Dr. Mitchell assured me this was a normal part of the adjustment process. After leaving a professionally abusive environment, you are developing your own scientific authority, she explained during one session. After a lifetime of external control, that takes time and practice. Be patient with yourself. My new position at the National Institutes of Health began 3 weeks after I left my parents' home. On my first day, my new supervisor, Dr. Williams, gave me a tour of the laboratory and introduced me to the research team I would be leading. "We are excited to have you," she said warmly. "Your work on cellular regeneration is exactly the kind of innovative research we need. Your ideas for spinal cord injury treatment could change everything." The contrast between this environment and my father's company was stark. Here, my research proposals were solicited and valued. My scientific expertise was respected. When I made suggestions in meetings, people took detailed notes rather than dismissed me. It was disorienting but wonderful. My father predictably did not accept my departure gracefully. True to his controlling nature, he attempted to sabotage my new position, calling Dr. Williams to warn her about my emotional instability and impractical research approaches. Fortunately, Dr. Williams saw through his tactics immediately. "Your father called yesterday," she mentioned casually during our weekly check-in. "He seemed very concerned about your research methodology." My stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "Nothing that concerned me," she replied firmly. "I judge researchers by their work and their scientific integrity, Vivian. So far, you have impressed me on both counts. Whatever personal issues exist between you and your family are your business, not mine." Her response brought tears to my eyes. This was how normal, healthy, professional relationships worked. This was how decent mentors treated their researchers. My mother alternated between angry messages and tearful pleas for reconciliation. "Your father is just concerned about your career." One text read, "We only want what is best for your professional development. Families should support each other." Another sent just hours later, "Your selfishness is destroying this family's medical reputation. Your brother is devastated by your abandonment." I showed these messages to Dr. Mitchell, who helped me see them for what they were. Manipulation tactics designed to trigger my guilt and sense of professional obligation. Together we crafted boundaries for communication. I would not respond to emotional blackmail. I would engage only with respectful messages that acknowledged my professional autonomy, and I would take as much space as I needed to heal. About a month after I left, my Aunt Margaret reached out. She had been my mother's sister, someone who had occasionally shown me kindness, but never intervened during the worst of my parents' professional behavior. "I heard what happened," she said when I cautiously answered her call. "I want you to know I believe you, Vivian, and I am sorry I never did anything to help you." Her acknowledgement was healing in a way I had not anticipated. Why did no one ever say anything? I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Everyone saw how they treated my research. Why did no one help? "Fear," she admitted quietly. "Your father has always been intimidating, especially in professional settings. And I think we all convinced ourselves it was not that bad, that all families had high expectations. It was easier than facing the truth and having to act on it." She paused. "That is not an excuse, just an explanation. I failed you, and I am deeply sorry for that." Her apology could not erase the past, but it helped me understand the complex dynamics that had allowed my professional abuse to continue unchallenged for so long. It also gave me hope that perhaps not everyone in my extended family would choose my parents over me. Oliver was the biggest surprise. 6 weeks after I left, he texted asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, choosing a public location where I would feel safe. When he arrived, he looked different somehow, smaller, less confident than the golden child I had grown up with. "I have been thinking a lot about what you said," he began awkwardly. "About having a different experience in our family than you did. And I have been watching Mom and Dad more closely since you left." "What have you seen?" I asked. He stared into his coffee. "They talk about your research differently than they talk about mine." "Always have, I guess. But I never really noticed before. And Dad, he gets this look sometimes when he talks about your work, like he is barely holding back his contempt." He looked up at me. "Did he ever physically hurt you, Vivian?" The question broke my heart. Not just for myself, but for Oliver. He was beginning to question everything he thought he knew about our family. "Not often," I answered honestly. He preferred professional sabotage. More control, less evidence. But yes, sometimes the intimidation got physical. Oliver nodded as if confirming something he had suspected. "I believe you," he said simply, "and I am sorry I did not see it sooner." Those 3 words, "I believe you," became a lifeline in my healing journey. From Charlotte, from Dr. Mitchell, from Aunt Margaret, from Oliver, and eventually from new colleagues I met as I rebuilt my professional life. Being believed after a lifetime of gaslighting was profoundly validating. My father's business began to suffer as rumors about his behavior spread through the medical research community. The incident with the Thompsons and Chens had not stayed private as he had demanded. Several key researchers left the company, including Charlotte, who accepted a senior position at a competitor. Funding sources began taking their grants elsewhere, citing concerns about the company's research culture. It was a small measure of justice, though I took no pleasure in it. About 6 months after I left, I encountered my father at a national biotech conference. I had known he would be there, but had decided to attend anyway. I refused to allow his presence to limit my professional growth. We came face to face in the networking area during a coffee break. For a moment he seemed unsure how to react. Then he stepped toward me, hand extended as if nothing had happened. "Vivian," he said smoothly, his public persona firmly in place. "You are looking well. Perhaps we could catch up over dinner. Discuss your return to the family business." I did not take his hand. "No, thank you," I replied calmly. "I am happy in my current research position." His smile tightened. "This rebellion has gone on long enough," he said, lowering his voice. "You have made your point. It is time to come home." "This is not a rebellion," I said, aware of curious onlookers from the scientific community. "This is my life now, and I am not coming back." He leaned closer, dropping all pretense of civility. "You think you can succeed without me? Everything you know, everything you have achieved came from my training. You are nothing on your own." A year earlier, those words would have devastated me. Now, they merely confirmed that I had made the right decision. "I am sorry you feel that way," I replied. "I wish you well, but I need to maintain my professional boundaries. Please do not contact me again unless you are ready to acknowledge the harm you have caused and make genuine amends." I walked away then, leaving him speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. The encounter left me shaky but proud. I had faced my professional abuser and maintained my boundaries. It was a victory, small but significant. As the 1-year anniversary of my escape approached, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no accusations or guilt trips. Instead, for the first time, she acknowledged that perhaps there had been problems in our family research dynamic. "I have been seeing a therapist," she wrote. "It was Oliver's idea. She has been helping me understand some things about myself and my choices as a mother and professional mentor. I am not ready to accept everything you have claimed about our family, but I am beginning to see that I may have failed you as a parent and research mentor in important ways. If you would be willing, I would like to meet someday to talk, on your terms, in your time." It was not a full acknowledgement of the professional abuse, not a complete apology, but it was a tiny opening, a small crack in the denial that had defined our relationship. I showed the letter to Dr. Mitchell. "This is your decision," she said. "There is no right or wrong answer. What do you feel ready for, if anything?" I considered the question carefully. "I am not ready to meet yet," I decided, "but I think I will write back. Set clear boundaries. Maybe someday with enough therapy on both sides. Some kind of limited professional relationship might be possible." "That sounds like a healthy approach," Dr. Mitchell nodded. "Remember, reconciliation is not required for your healing. It is an option, not an obligation." That perspective was liberating. For so long, I had been bound by obligation, by the idea that family relationships must be maintained at all costs, even at the expense of my professional well-being. Now I understood that I had choices. I could set conditions for relationships. I could require respect and professional safety. I could walk away from people who harmed my career development, even if they were family, especially if they were family. As I continue building my new life, I am learning what healthy professional relationships look like. Charlotte remains a dear friend and research collaborator. My team at the NIH respects and values my scientific contributions. I have begun presenting at international conferences with a much clearer understanding of my research worth and professional boundaries. I have found a community through a support group for professionals who have experienced workplace abuse. Most importantly, I am learning to trust my scientific instincts, to recognize my own research value independent of others' validation, to hear my own intellectual voice amid the lingering echoes of my parents' criticism. Some days are harder than others. The programming of a lifetime does not disappear overnight, but each day I grow stronger, more confident in my right to pursue meaningful research on my own terms. My value was never determined by how they saw me at their table, but by how I finally learned to see myself free from their definitions, their limitations, their professional cruelty, worthy of respect, worthy of scientific recognition, worthy of intellectual peace. If you are watching this and recognize your own family and mine, please know you are not alone. The journey to professional freedom is difficult but possible. The first step is believing you deserve better because you do. We all do. Thank you for listening to my story.